Parents and coaches want to see their athletes grow into something real, something lasting. But it can get really frustrating when that athlete seems more focused on chasing trends than chasing their own potential. And that frustration is why I'm continuing to add to my pain point series with today's episode. I want to help you get underneath the surface level stuff and dig into the real issues that I've heard from parents and coaches, sometimes players themselves, and things that I've experienced as a parent, as a coach, and as a former player. I'm coming at this from all those angles, and yeah, I'm going to add a little bit of brain science and nerdy stuff too. So today's episode lives in the ambition pillar. We're talking about identity. We're talking about focus and what happens when an athlete doesn't really know who they are or what they want, so they bounce from goal to goal or trend to trend. Let's get into it. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Next Season Podcast, episode 24. And if you've gotten a chance to listen to or watch any of the previous 23 episodes, thank you. It would help a ton if you go check them out, to like, to share, to comment. We'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you like. Let me know what questions you have, what's resonated, what clicks. Share them with friends and others who might find value as well. So that obviously helps me a ton, and I appreciate it. And if you've had a chance to listen to any of those previous episodes, you've heard me say this. Anything that I say in these podcasts, including today, I'm saying to myself too. This podcast is never about calling people out. It's about calling people up, and that's myself included. And today I want to hit on a big one. This is a pain point that cuts deep, especially in today's social media heavy culture. And I got two separate messages that to me were very similar. They both struck the same nerve. So today I want to hit a little bit of a double play. These are from parents of high school players. One's a senior, one's a junior, so still young, but also on the cusp of big life changes, figuring out what you want to do and who you are and who you want to be. And so the structure of the episode, I'm going to share the comments that I received, talk a little bit about what's happening in the brain and give you a couple of key takeaways there. And then talk about some things that I would do if I was in that position, right? If I was the parent or the coach. So again, I want to make sure it's very actionable, key takeaways, but just talk about some of the neuroscience as well and give some perspective of what could be going on. And again, what I would do if I was a parent or coach in that situation, or even the athlete. So here's the comments that I got from parents. Again, one's a high school junior, one's a high school senior, both baseball players, and among other sports. Here's what they said. The first one said, he doesn't know who he wants to be yet. He just copies what he sees on social. And the second one, his goals change every week. He's chasing the hype, not something deeper. And so you can see the correlation, the connection between those two messages. So again, I want to do an episode where we address both of those. And thank you for sharing that. Now, if you're a player, maybe this is you, right? Maybe this is you right now. Or if you're a parent or your coach, maybe you said this out loud or at least thought it. Either way, you're not alone. This is super common, but it's not easy. There's actually a lot of science behind why this happens, especially for teenagers and young adults. Let's dig into it a little bit. I'm going to call it like it is, right? You're watching your kid or your player hop around like a confused squirrel. If you've ever seen a squirrel on the road, I almost hit one today on my way to pick up my kids from school. And it was just stuck in the middle of the road, just going left, going right, didn't know what to do. And I thought I hit it. And unfortunately, the road of life is littered with squirrels who can't make a decision. And that's just the nature. We've got to experience it. And sometimes we have to make those mistakes. So going back to that confused squirrel, one week he's all in on his goals, right? The next week he's slacking. He knows where he wants to go to school and what he wants to study. And the next thing you know, he's got zero interest in going at all. Or he's changing his batting stance more often than he's changing his sliding shorts. Right? He wants to play 3 sports, and the next day he wants to focus on one. Tomorrow you find out that he wants to become a live streamer or the next social media influencer. And that, again, these are not all bad. Some of them are, but I'm not here to judge. It's not the fact that he's figuring out his path and has multiple interests, right? That's not the problem. The problem is the pattern. It's the pattern that gets you. And so what you're seeing here is not curiosity, it's confusion. Not passion, it's imitation. And what you're not seeing is drive. It's more drift. Like he's chasing something, but it's not coming from him. It's coming from something that's trending, whatever's loud, whatever's cool this week. And that's the part that feels off to you because you've seen him grow up. You've seen the real, authentic young man that he is. And it feels off. It feels inauthentic because real ambition, real growth needs roots. You cannot sustain with just hype. For a long time, this was me. I get it. I get what's happening. Yeah, that people are wired different ways. Some people can be laser focused on things and it's complete focus on one thing and they were able to execute that. Some people, their brain is better when they're able to have multiple things that they're working on. Now, it's important to understand that can obviously go way too far into multitasking or distraction and lack of focus. But some people operate better with being able to juggle multiple things and have multiple interests. And so it's understanding his brain and what's really important there, but also understanding that at the end of the day, focus is what gets results. Let's talk about what's happening in the brain a little bit. Teenage and young adult brains are still developing their prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning and reflection and identity and self-control. Again, you've heard me say this before. This is the CEO of our brain. It's like they're driving a car with a half-built GPS system. They don't know where they're going yet as a teenage brain until 25, 26, sometimes 27 years old, somewhere in that range is when their brain is kind of fully developed. Now, still plastic, it can still grow, it can still adapt, you still learn. The whole saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can. It's just different. It's much more plastic up until 25, 26, 27 years old. So that's what's going on with the prefrontal cortex. Meanwhile, the dopamine system, which is the brain's reward system, is fully online. Okay, that's fully functioning and it's super sensitive. So anything that gives a quick hit, those likes, those highlight reels, the new trends, the quick stimulation, the way that social media and games and videos are created now is to get your attention, quick transitions to make it super engaging, to suck you in, and it's reward, it's dopamine, okay? And it feels rewarding to do that. And if you don't like something, you just swipe away from it and on to the next thing. And so that is confusing our brain and our dopamine system. And that's why it's easier to chase a new goal every week than it does to stick with something through that boring, uncomfortable, and the uncertain parts. Plus, again, the people are constantly bombarded with other people's success on social, but it's not real success. It's the polished and edited and curated version that they want you to see. And when you're seeing that all day, in your own head, you can start to think that that's normal, and that's how these people operate all the time, and that's just not the case. And what you don't realize is that you're mimicking someone else and wanting to be like someone else or have what someone else has, but you don't have the full picture. So let's talk about a couple things. There's a whole bunch of things going on in the brain. I want to highlight three of them. First is what I call no identity, no anchor. If an athlete doesn't have a strong sense of who they are, what drives them, and what they actually value, what's important to them, their goals are going to be just guesses. They think that they want something until it gets hard. And then when it gets hard, like, well, I didn't really want it. I'm just going to find the next thing. It's a little bit easier, right? And so the goal changes again and again and again. Why? Because it wasn't rooted in identity. It was attached to a moment. It was attached to a mood, a trend. So when you don't have that anchor, that inner anchor, your why, you keep drifting from one idea to the next, hoping that something sticks, hoping it catches something underneath the surface that you can't see. And I want to be clear that trying things out is normal. Exploration is good. Curiosity is good. But without an identity driving it, it's not intentional. It's just noise. So that's the first thing. No identity is no anchor. The second thing is they're watching finished products. And I kind of talked about this earlier, but it's like watching a movie trailer thinking you have the whole story. You don't. It's reading the back cover of a book and thinking you know the entire book. It's just not the case. These athletes are scrolling social media all day, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, watching highlight reels of guys who've already made it. Social media makes it easy to forget that greatness is built. It's not bought. They're watching dudes with custom gear and pro trainers and crazy metrics and equipment and clean mechanics. What happens is that you start to mimic what you see without understanding what those guys went through to get to where they are in the success they have or the success that they want you to think that they have. They're copying outcomes, not processes. They're copying form, not the individuality behind it. So now you've got a kid that's modeling their entire identity after a guy who's been grinding for 10 or 15 or 20 years, but all they saw was that slow-mo swing and the drip and the celly. That's not realistic. And again, we can look at guys like Mike Trout and Mookie Betts, and we know those guys have put in years and years of work. And there's a bunch of other guys out there that like to flaunt themselves as that caliber of player, but they haven't put in the work. It's because it's edited to make you think that they're that good. Don't fall for it. Your athlete sees a guy drop bombs on a training reel and thinks that that's what I need to do. You're not seeing the grind and the reps and the late nights and the frustration and the setbacks. You see the results, you see the highlight, you see the end product. And when you try to imitate that style or those mechanics or that mentality or that drip and that celly without understanding what it took to get there, you're not building any skill. Your copying style is superficial. Okay? It's empty and it's not going to stick. And this is how you end up with athletes who look the part, but haven't built the parts. Along those lines, so again, we've got no identity, no anchor. You got watching finished products. And then the third part, something that I talked about in the previous episode as well, is that comparison is killing. And specifically in this one, is killing your clarity. Comparison isn't just stealing joy anymore. It's stealing direction. These guys aren't just seeing who's better than them. They're seeing who they think they're supposed to be. And that can mess with your head. Okay? You've got a 16-year-old trying to find his way. And every time that he scrolls, he's hit with this pressure. Be more like him. Look like that. Wear this. Train like that guy. Why don't you have all those stats, that swing, these followers? And so now, instead of building a life and game based upon who you actually are and what you actually value, you start building a character, a persona. And I love the idea of create a player, but it's got to be you. It's got to be based on you and what you value, not anybody else. We're going to come back to that. So you're shaping your identity around what plays well on a screen, not what's real or sustainable. And the worst part of this is this constant comparison can create low-level background noise that never stops. And in that noise, you lose clarity. You stop trusting your own instincts. And that's dangerous because if you don't know what truly matters to you, you're going to burn out chasing something that never belonged to you in the first place. It wasn't yours. I've come to realize that burnout isn't so much a result of all the work, but work that isn't aligned to you or your goals or your identity, you as an individual and the player in person that you want to be. So let's go a little bit more into the brain and the neuroscience to understand what's happening there, because this isn't just motivational fluff. This is real. This is brain science. First, identity is not found. It's not something you stumble on as you scroll on social media. Identity is formed with intention and time. Brick by brick and rep by rep, just like you form a swing, just like you solidify your mechanics on a squat or any exercise movement, or how you throw a slider. It is rep after rep after rep that builds the skill. The identity is formed the same way. It's with intention that is unique to you and over time of consistent work. In episode 8, I laid out the 5 bricks of the ambition pillar. So go check that one out because it's all in there. Everything I'm going to talk about is all in there. I'm going to give surface level here today. But in that episode, I talk about the creative player mentality, which is establishing the ideal version of you and what attributes and qualities you want to have, and then living it, doing the things and demonstrating the behaviors of that version of you. And that's what you'll become. So that's identity. Also in that episode is defining your values and your vision, as well as establishing your standards and boundaries. These 4 things, values, vision, standards, and boundaries, are going to help you create your target and what you want your world to look like or be like, what you expect from yourself and others, and what you'll accept from yourself and others. And I'm working to line up one of my mentors to come on soon and break these down in a way that only he can. So I'm not going to spoil that, but I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Also in episode 8, we talk about never summit targets, this idea of progressive and perpetual goal setting, but without attachment to the results. So if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. Set a new target and try again. And finally, in that episode, we talk about generative drive. It's building that internal, that intrinsic motivation to where you don't need others to remind you or tell you to get to work. You're self-motivated and you're self-disciplined in the pursuit of your goals. So again, definitely go back and check out that episode. I want to highlight the first brick today, which is the creative player, because to me, this is the one that really connects with the messages that I got from these parents. And to those parents, I'll remind you, there are grown men, adults, middle age, older in some cases, who are still battling this, still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, right? Desperate in some cases. So I think there's certainly a desire as parents and coaches to help our athletes and kids avoid that. So we push them to work on this now. I get that. But again, this has to be intrinsic. Sometimes the best that we can do is provide the info and communicate and listen. And that said, if the goal is to play college ball or to get drafted or make it to the show and hopefully stay for a while, you don't have much time to waste. They're juniors and seniors in high school. Even if the kid's, 12, 13 years old, that time comes quick. And so we don't really have a whole lot of time to waste, but understand that this bigger picture stuff, there's a lot of people who are battling this well into life. So how do we actually build an internal foundation that aligns to our brain science? I want to give you 2 actionable steps. First is practice delayed gratification. You need to train long-term thinking and long-term pursuit. Most kids today, unfortunately, and most adults in many cases, are dopamine junkies. And it's not entirely our fault. We've got phones in our hands. We've got fast food in a microwave society. We've got Amazon on our doorstep in a day and sometimes less. We stream shows and movies on demand. Okay. Didn't used to be able to do that. We get our food delivered to us without leaving the couch. If you need a date to join you for that movie, yeah, there's an app for that and just a quick swipe. Right? That's the reality. And unfortunately, oftentimes with young men, I don't want to go into it too much, but even the pursuit of getting a date, there's an easy button for that. And it's a really, really dangerous button to push. As Dr. Andrew Huberman puts it, there's too much reward without enough effort. And when you have too much reward without enough effort, you are disrupting and dysregulating your dopamine system. And this conditioning carries over to our relationships, to school, to sports. When things aren't going your way, you change positions, you change jobs. Your parents step in and complain, which is a big problem, right? If we're in college, we don't like how things are going. Boom, you just hit the button for the transfer portal and there you go. You're in a different position. It's not supposed to be that way. We feel like our results aren't coming quickly enough, so we just give up and look for the shortcuts or quit altogether. And all of this builds incredibly weak brains that don't align with the grit that is required for real world success. The prefrontal cortex, again, that brain's planning center, gets stronger when you delay gratification. There's a famous study from Stanford University in the 1970s where researchers ran the study with a bunch of 4-year-olds. And each kid, they brought in 4-year-olds to sit at this table in this room, and they had a single marshmallow they put in front of them. And the deal was simple. If you waited 15 minutes without eating it, they'd give you another marshmallow. But if you gave in and you ate it early, you just get that one. And so some kids would stare it down, right? Some sang songs, some turn their back to it to distract themselves, to take their focus away from it. And others, they just went full savage and popped that thing in their mouth before the researcher even left the room. And here's what's crazy about this study. When they followed up with those kids years later, the ones who held out for that second marshmallow, who delayed their gratification just 15 minutes, had higher SAT scores, better focus, better coping skills. And I'm not sure of the mechanisms of the way they tested this, but certainly with SAT scores, they can test it. So there's a whole bunch of ways that they evaluated what they called success. See, the test wasn't really about the marshmallows. It was about the ability to delay gratification, and it predicted real life success. For a while, people just thought that this was how you were wired. Like you either got willpower or you don't. But then researchers like Angela Duckworth and others came along and flipped that idea. And they found that delaying gratification isn't a personality trait. It's a skill. It's one that can be developed and trained, just like swinging a bat or hitting a spot on the mound. It's through reps, little reps of discipline. They're choosing a process instead of chasing a feeling. And this is where your brain steps in. So every time that you delay gratification, every time you say no to that quick hit of dopamine, and say yes to something harder, but more meaningful and more aligned to your goals and more aligned to your identity and who you want to become, you're literally rewiring your brain. And that is neuroplasticity in action. You're building up the part of your brain that handles pressure, that holds a vision, that makes better decisions. If you remember the 5 bricks of the ambition pillar: identity, vision and values, standards and boundaries, goal setting, those all tie to establishing your vision and path and making better decisions. The prefrontal cortex, again, is that mental muscle of high performers. And this is made stronger by delayed gratification. And another awesome part of the brain, one of my favorites, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is the grit brain, is built and strengthened and actually gets larger in function by doing hard things that you don't really want to do. It's discipline. And over time, you start to like that hard stuff a little bit more. And it becomes part of your identity. It's not just a grind, it becomes who you are and what you do. On the flip side, when you don't demonstrate discipline and when you fall into that trap of instant gratification, you trigger the limbic system, which is a reactive part of the brain that craves easy pleasure and avoids discomfort. And there's a time and a place for the limbic system. When you're trying to pursue goals, build identity, do hard things, you don't want to give into that and activate that part of the system, because that's just craving pleasure and avoiding discomfort. You promote dopamine dysregulation. That's where the brain expects the reward now, so it becomes less willing to work for it. When you get that dopamine without the effort, your body and your mind crave that more, and it's looking for shortcuts. You have weaker goal orientation because the brain's reward system starts to associate pleasure with comfort, not with effort. And so for the athlete who jumps from goal to goal every week, or you're struggling to figure out who you are, you keep chasing the hype, this isn't a maturity issue. It's a wiring issue, and it's fixable. So specifically what to do: build time and effort between desire and reward. I'm going to say that again. Build time and effort between desire and reward. What does that mean? If you want an outcome, you need to get super intentional about putting in time gaps in some level of effort from the moment that you want that thing, that ambition, that desire comes into your head or your heart, and the time you actually get it. Again, time and effort between desire and reward. You want that pizza or that Snickers bar? You can have it. You got to wait till tomorrow. You need to improve your on-field performance. Set a goal for 30 or 60 or 90, 100 days where you're going to put in measurable and intentional, not exhaustive necessarily, but measurable and intentional work to chip away at the goal. Research shows that when you set a goal for the near or midterm future and then work at it daily, you're training your brain to think bigger and more long-term. You want to be someone who doesn't chase the hype? Set a goal, stick to it, even when it gets boring. Boring reps build elite brains. And so that's the first thing, the practice delayed gratification. The second action that I want to leave you with is understanding your personal highlight reel. This next move, if we really want to anchor our ambition to our identity, is start building what I call your mental highlight reel. And it begins with journaling. And I know journaling sounds like something, your teacher told you to do in middle school, or a counselor or a therapist suggested, and it might seem a little woo-woo to you, but it works. Okay. We're not talking about Dear Diary, today I ate Chipotle for lunch, right? We all love good Chipotle. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a mental performance tool that is backed by neuroscience. When you reflect, like really think back on moments where you pushed through, where you showed up, where you stood tall, or just felt proud, or something challenged you, you activate something in your brain called the default mode network. And it's the same system that turns on when you're imagining your future or daydreaming and thinking about what's next. In other words, it's your identity builder. And when you write that stuff down, so reflection activates the default mode network. And when you write it down, you're taking those abstract thoughts and turning them into something concrete. And the physical act of writing it down triggers the reticular activating system, the RAS. It's a network of brain regions that focus attention and awareness to what you deem important, what you think is valuable, such as goals and ambitions, again, your identity. So you're literally helping the brain to form stronger, stickier self narratives, which are the foundation of long term confidence and generative or intrinsic drive. So, let me give you a real world example of this. Corbin Burns, one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years. When Corbin Burns was struggling early in his career, part of what turned things around for him wasn't just mechanics or training. It was how he began rewiring how he saw himself. He started working as a mental skills coach, one of the best in baseball, best in all of sports, Brian Kane. And one of the first things that Kane had him do was build a personal highlight reel, not a hype video from YouTube, but moments that Burns himself had lived. And he wrote them down and he revisited them, and it became part of his routine. And over time, recognizing those highlight reels, all of the things that he did, right? Those mental reps helped him shift his identity from a guy who struggles to a guy who dominates. And again, now he's one of the most consistent aces and one of the highest paid players in the biz. The science behind this is that reflecting on your own wins, even small ones, shift where you get your dopamine from. So instead of external dopamine, right, things that you get from outside of you, you're getting your dopamine, your rewards, those intrinsic rewards from inside. Instead of getting hooked on likes and follows or with someone else's approval, you start to crave your own progress. And that's a massive shift. So here's how you do it. You pick a cadence, maybe it's daily, maybe it's 3 days per week, maybe it's just 1 day a week, and answer a few identity prompts. Things like, what kind of player do I want to be known as? What's one value that I want to be remembered for? What's a moment this week that I was proud of, even if no one else noticed it? Right? What are some things that I did? What are some small wins that I did? And here's something silly, but I just to paint a picture. You get an itch on your nose, or you get a little tickle on your nose. How long can you wait before you scratch it? Right? Instead of going right away to scratch it, can you go a minute? Can you go 5 minutes? And even something like silly like that, when it starts to get ingrained into nature and who you are, it's building those mental muscles. Those are mental reps. Stack those with bigger things that are more applicable to what you do. It doesn't have to be a video. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be written stories. It can be voice memos that you give yourself. You can sketch something. You can just write down quick thoughts, quick words. The specific moments and situations where you were that guy. When you did those things, when you demonstrated that best version of you, catalog those wins and stack those moments. Because the more you revisit them, the more your brain starts saying, that is who I am. And when you know who you are, guess what gets easier? Goal setting, commitment, ownership, all that surface level chasing, it starts to fade away. So again, I want to recap the actionable steps that we covered in this. Go watch episode 8 on ambition without attachment. The ambition pillar for next season athletes. That's step 1. Step 2, I want you to build your creative player, the ideal version of you. Write it down. Get really intentional about this. If you think it's weird, be weird. Exceptional people are the exception. Be different. Then really think about practice delaying gratification and do it all the time. Find ways to challenge yourself. If you got a tickle on your nose, see how long you can delay before you scratch it. Okay. Step 4 is write down your highlight reel. Acknowledge the times that you were that creative player. Replay them in your head. Revisit them all the time and tell yourself how damn good you are and what you'll do or be by consistently putting in that work. Those are the 4 things. Go watch episode 8, build your creative player, practice delayed gratification, write down your highlight reels and revisit them. If this were my kid or my player, I'd pull him aside and I'd say something like this. Look, I know that the world is loud right now. I know it's easy to scroll and think that you're not doing enough or being enough. But the truth is that the guys that you look up to, they stopped chasing every shiny object a long time ago. They picked a lane and they floored it in that lane. You don't have to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. You just have to be real. You have to be you. And that starts with figuring out what matters to you, not what's trending. And then I'd help them pick one goal not my goal for him, his goal, and help him stay with that long enough to feel what it's like to follow through. And let him go through 3 or 4 or 5 really difficult phases in that and show him what persistence and perseverance and resilience looks like. And that's more mental reps for him. That's more empowerment and proof of what he's capable of. Don't shame them for chasing trends. That's where their brain is right now. But don't ignore it either. Help them slow down and filter. Your job is not to hand them their identity, it's to help them shape it. They don't need a louder social media feed or more drip. They need a quieter mind and a clearer why. Thank you for tuning in. If this helped, please share it. If you enjoyed it, hit that like or comment. Let me know. Subscribe. You know the drill. As much as I hate it, I have to play the algorithm game. So I appreciate anything and everything that you can do to help this channel reach more people. My challenge to you, do these things. Don't just watch or listen. Go do these and tell me if it doesn't work. And if it didn't, I'll send you 2 marshmallows. We'll see you next time.